Hello, I'm Mark, and welcome to part 3 of my Unreal Engine tutorial on how to build a multi-stage and non-linear questing engine for your Unreal Engine games. So in part 1, we went ahead and built out all the structures we needed for our questing tables, and in part 2 we went ahead and built the questing container object that we will be using to manage each individual quest within our quest log component, which is what we'll be working on today. So in part 3, we're going to be circling back to a quest log and filling this all out, and then we'll also put the finishing touches to our core quest object for the parallel processing on objective updates, and we'll also add the dependency function that we were missing in the core quest. So this should all tie it all together, and then in part 4 we'll go ahead and then integrate this with using the interface into both the character class as well as the player controller, and then we'll go ahead and play with it within the blueprints. So this should be the last of the really heavy coding for a while, just to kind of finish off the system. So without further ado, we've got a lot of ground to cover today, so let's get started. Okay, so let's get started by first getting all of the includes set up. So as you can see here, we got the core quest row already done. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the additional includes for both our state object as well as for the quest object. So to do that, I'm just going to type in include core. So we already have row, there's our state object, and let's go and get the quest object. So there it is. Alright, so now that we've got both the, we've got all of our includes, let's go ahead and start defining this component. Alright, so what I'm first going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring in a new set of delegates. So I'm just going to go bring those in here. So as you can see, I've got some notes here. So we've got broadcast delegates. So one of the functions of this component is to actually act as a facade around the actual quest objects that we're going to have in the system. And so as part of that facade, we are going to have some relay functions here, which is the broadcast out. And what they're going to do is whenever a quest fires within the quest list, it will fire up to this component, and then this component will then relay it back out to whatever is connected to it. So it's going to act as a middleman between the UI and any host feature functionality that needs to run based on anything that happens as the quest is playing out. And so that's kind of what the broadcast does. Then we have this other one down here, which I've got a note here. So this is the binding back. So we have information that's coming from the quest, which is in the questing array, which we'll get to in about maybe 5-6 minutes, which is being managed, right? And so that's broadcasting up. But we also have objectives being completed and being sent in, and so that will then come into the quest log, and then the quest log will then need to then dispatch that down to the active quest to try and find it in the active quest so that it can update the quest. And so what I'm going to be doing, rather than running in a large iterator loop, instead I'm going to use asynchronization so that we can try and run this in parallel. So what will happen is that all of the individual quests that are being currently managed in the quest log that are active are all going to bind back to this component, and so when this component broadcasts, it will then broadcast all of that same ID down to each quest, and then each quest will determine whether it needs to update its current stage or not. And so that's how that's going to work. So this will be used for our asynchronous parallel processing. And then finally, we've got an update tracker. So whenever the tracker gets updated, this goes and gets called, and this is just for UI. So this is update tracker UI. All right, so now that we've got that defined, we can now come down into our core class. So again, in the first public section, this is where I like to keep all of my event bindings. So I'm just going to go ahead and just bring those over. So these are all the event bindings that are created up here, and it's got some red squigglies while the IntelliSense tries to figure out what I'm doing. So I'm just going to hit the save button. But so these all match to the event bindings up here. So again, and now that we've got our event bindings here for the update objective progression, I can now come back to our core quest object here. And as you can see here, this is the attach and detach function we created. I can now go ahead and uncomment this out, and there, now we can have the bindings suddenly work. So this is how so each one of these quest objects will attach back up to the host so that it can do its check. And then whenever we've completed and turned in a quest and we move it from active to archive, we just need to, as part of the removal process, we're just going to go and remove the binding. And again, this is just using this pointer to manage all of that for us. All right, so I'll just keep that open. So that's what that is, and that is going back to our quest log component, and that's the one here. This is the binding back to the quest for asynchronous objective updates. All right, so that should do it for all of our bindings. So most of these are relays, with the exception of this one, which goes the other way, which is more of a shotgun out. All right, so now that we've got that all defined, we can now come down to our protected. And the first things I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and set up our variables for our quest log. Okay, so here again, I've got a little Boolean flag so I can turn debug messaging on and off if I have that turned on. So it's just something I like to do within my classes. Just makes it a little bit easier, especially when I'm developing and looking for bugs. So this is our current active quest, and this is actually an array of core quest objects. So these are the containers that we defined in part 2. So that's where those guys live. And so as we add a new active quest to the quest log, we'll add it into here. Every time we turn in a quest, we'll then take the data out of a quest that's being managed here and just add it into the quest tracking queue here, which is the completed quests. And then we have the tracker. So this is anything that we're currently tracking, and all we're going to do is, since this is here and this is always going to be live, we're just going to go ahead and just use that same object. So this is just a pointer, and this is just a pointer. So we're not duplicating work, we're just pointing back to the same location in Unreal Engine's memory table. And then we're going to do the same thing for timed quest too. So timed quest, this will allow us to, again, really narrow down our time tracking for anything which is using an active timer. So, and we'll start to close the loop on that part, which is we kind of hinted at when we were doing the quest object up here. So we have the tracking of the actual objective here, but we're also going to track which current time quests we have here, and then when a time quest is done or if it falls through, then we'll update this array so that we're not trying to update things that are no longer relevant. All right, so now that we've got that done, we can now come into the protected methods. I'm going to be adding a couple in here. I'm going to go ahead and add a second override, and that second override is going to be end play. So this is begin play. This gets called every time the component gets initialized at runtime. This will get called every time the component gets destroyed at runtime. So this is just a nice way of, if you need any cleanup code, you can put it into end play. We need the functions for our delegates, so I'm just going to add those in here. So again, these functions will get are getting bound to the elements within the array, and then they're going to act as relay functions. So when these guys get called, then they will then call on these functions to broadcast out. So that's kind of what's going on here. And that's why these guys can stay as protected functions. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead. These are the functions, protected functions, that will go ahead and do work for us within the component. So we have complete quest. So this gets called every time we actually turn in a quest. We have remove quest, which will actually handle the removal part of the completion process. Error message, again, this is just for me and just how, so I can control when to show error messages in the UI. And then restore quest. So this is how we restore a quest when we go from a save and loading system. So we have two ways that we can put quests into this active quest. One is through adding a new quest, which will be a public method we're going to add next. The other one is the restore quest, which would then come from saving and loading. So the serialized data will come in, and then we'll rehydrate this list back to a previous state that we saved at. And so that's kind of what that does. Spawn quest, this is just how we create that active quest and put it into Unreal Engine's memory table. And then we have a just is valid handle, and this just checks to make sure that this is a valid handle, which is pointing to a valid table. Since we'll be working with a lot with row handles. All right, and so next, I'm just going to come down to the public side. Let's just finish off getting all of the signatures defined, and then we'll come back and then we'll start running through implementation. So all of these functions are, I'm just going to go bring them all in. So all of these functions are being used externally. And again, like I said, think of this kind of the quest log component as kind of like a facade around the core quest logic. So a lot of these are going to be little auxiliary functions that are going to just be used to help interact with those individual quests. That way we don't have to worry about tracking that array through other subsystems. Those subsystems will just bind to this, and then this will act as the broker between those other systems that are looking at the quest log and the actual data in there. So again, we've got get save data and load data. So this is for saving and loading. So again, we defined this in the last video. So that is under core quest data here. So as you can see here, this is the save and loading structure. So this is the data that will get serialized into our save file and then deserialized when we want to rehydrate back to the last saved version. So that's what these two functions will support. Add new quest. So this will be where the quest giver wants to go ahead and hand us the quest. So, and that again is done through a row handle, which is going to be the table and the row on the table. So again, this will allow us to partition our quests into smaller tables to make it a bit more manageable. All right, so then we have the get active quest by ID. Again, this is just a helper function to get the active quest by ID. So some of this is going to be needed for some of this is going to be used in the UI. Some of this is going to be used for quest givers. So again, this is just saying get the active quest by the ID. So we put the quest ID and we'll get the quest back. Again, this is a constant, so this is read only. This is the list of all the active quests. So again, this is read only, and then this is a list of all the tracked quests. So, and again, this is just there to kind of allow us to hook in if we for when we want to create a quest log UI component. Then we have the update quest objectives. Again, this is how we're going to be, this is the main function for updating any quest objective in the list. So everything will call this, and this will then decide how it wants to feed it out to the quests that are currently running. And then we have the complete quest by ID. So whenever we do complete a quest and hand it in, this is what we'll be passing back. Set the tracker quest. So this is how we're going to set that. Get all completed quests. Get all completed quests by ID. Again, variations on how we want to get this information. Can turn in a quest. Well, we want to make sure that if we have a quest, again, this will be used by a quest giver component when we start building that. But these are all the functions that we can build upon that are all there. And then finally, we have the quest completed outcome. So this is the function that we need to finish off the our quest giver back in the when we did the quest row. So when we came here, we did our quest row, we have our completed dependencies, but we weren't able to finish this off. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, this is meets quest completion. And so for that one to be finished, I'm just going to go grab this code. So now that we've got the quest log, that function there, we can now come in and do this. So again, this is on meets completion. So we bring in the actor, we go and find to see if there's a quest log on the actor. If this is a valid, then what we're going to do is we're going to take the quest state, which we defined over here. So this is the state of this could be of the quest, the stage in the quest, or the objective in the quest. So we're just reusing this state object, but we're using this at the quest level. So let's get back to here. So we're passing this in with the idea that this function is going to set it and pass it back out. So, and this is actually a Boolean as well, so I could actually put this in a true false to see if this actually is true. But I'm just going to run it like this for now. So the value, this is the value that is going to be sitting in the rule. We pass the rule in. If the rule is valid, this could turn back as being true, and then this state object gets set, and then we're going to check to see if this state object is either going to be set to passing or failing based on what the rule is determining for the criteria for this quest to be handed back. And so we'll see this in action when we get back into quest giving a little bit later. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and close that, and I'm just going to go ahead, and this is the detach, so we're just going to go close that. So now let's go ahead and start to define all these green squigglies. And we'll start from the top and work our way down to the bottom. All right. All right, so first off, we've got a couple of little things that we need to do at the constructor, or to check in the constructor, since that's already been written for us. So, so I want the tick to actually work on this, because this is what I'm going to be using to manage timed objectives, and that's going to be they're all going to be managed running off the tick within this component. But I don't want this component to necessarily tick if we don't have anything in the timed objective array. So what I'm going to do is on begin play, we're automatically going to set this component to tick enable equals false, even though it can tick. So this tick component will only tick when this goes from component enable false to component true, and that will only happen if we have an objective in there which we can then tick on. And then next, so we've got that, we've got the begin play, so the next one is going to be end play. So this is just some cleanup, and for cleanup I'm just going to go ahead and put this in here. So again, this is done when the component is being destroyed. So what I'm going to do here is I just want to make sure that before we do any cleanup that all of this stuff gets unattached from the current active quest. It's just a cleanup. So we just iterate through, pass this in, and we will run the detach, which is being done, where is that? Here. So we're running this one to tell it to detach itself. And then I'm also going to set the current track time quest queue to empty. So once that goes to empty, there's nothing in there for us to be processing in any tick component. And then we'll call end play. So this will then continue with the deconstruction process. So it's just a little cleanup I just like to do just to make sure that it is all cleaned up and nothing accidentally gets fired when it shouldn't be getting fired during the deconstruction process. All right, so that's that. So next up is going to be our delegate functions. So these are kind of like our bubbling up relays. So I'm just going to go ahead and fix all of these so we can just bring all of this in all at once. So and the last one. All right, so I'll just minimize this. All right, so these are just bubble ups. So again, this allows me to take information, any information that gets broadcasted from any of the active quests, and we'll see that when we do the when we start wiring up those quests in the spawn, how all of this will get connected. But each one of those will then if any one of those broadcasts, we'll then intercept the broadcast and then relay that back up. And again, this is just to create a nice little facade around that list. So again, this one was going to this is listening to this, and then it's just going to so this will get called, and then we broadcast up to anything that is listening to this on the on this component. And then this is the progression update. So again, our progression widget, when we build that out, will be listening to this. That way it doesn't have to listen to the individuals, each individual. And then this one is the relay quest autocomplete. So whenever a quest fires off an autocomplete, it will then bubble up to the host, to this host component, and then this will then bubble up to whatever's listening to it to complete that quest. And then we have the listen update tracking list. So this is when we so this is done whenever we add something into the tracking list from the UI. So we'll say, well, when we click that object, we're just passing. This is why we're going to just pass this pointer in. And then we'll check if the checked has it in there, we'll remove it. Otherwise, if it's not in there, we'll add it as a unique. So that's all this does. And then we'll go ahead and then we'll fire this to then tell the UI to just repaint itself and update the list. So this is how we just do it. This is just purely done for a refresh. And that's why there's nothing being passed up. It's just a 0 parameter delegate. All right, and then lastly we have the add listen to time tracking. So this is for anything which is using active timers. Just gonna bring this in here. Let's just close this, close that. So this, and then this is unique for the timing. So if any of those, if an objective suddenly moves to a stage that has if any quest moves to a stage which has a timed objective in it, it will then call call a delegate back up to this component, and then this component will then go ahead and first add it to make sure it's added to the list. So this is the needs to add, and we'll add it as a unique. That way, if for some reason this gets called twice in a row, we don't want to put 2 hits in there. We only want to put 1. And then if this comes back as false, it means the objective has been completed, and we can remove it from this list. And then what we do is we'll check this list to determine if we need to tell the tick component here to start ticking or not. And so that's how we manage that. So again, all we do is we just check the number. If the number is greater than 0, keep it enabled. Otherwise, if it's 0, then disable it, because we don't have any timed objectives that we need to be managing. So, and that's all that does. Again, what I want to do is I want to just make sure that we only tick and we only update through this mechanism when we absolutely have to. That way we're not running any updates for no reason at all. All right, so next let's go to the component log, and let's do the complete request, remove quest. So I'm just going to go ahead and do, just going to add these. And we'll just put this one in there too. And this one, and spawn quest, and I'll put this one in there too. So these are the last of the functions. So I'm just going to put these up here, and we'll go ahead and fill them out. So complete quest. So this function will get run every time we want to start. We want to run a complete. We want to complete the quest. I finish it off and move it out of the actively being run quest and into history. So I'm just going to go grab this code real quick. So here, all we're doing is we're just passing in the object reference, and then we just make sure, one, it's a valid reference. Two, can we archive this quest? If we can archive this quest, which most of the time we want to, but again, if this is a quest that can be repeated over and over, we might turn that flag off. So if this is, so if I just come down here real quick and I can kind of show that. So this is the variable we're looking at, can archive quest, and that will be in the table. So if we can do it, again, we can archive it, then we'll just add it into the completed, and this is just adding it into an array. So we're just going to come here, get the quest data, and get the quest history. Yeah, and this we did all when we did the quest state data. So all of that function is there, and it's just we've got a pointer, and then we have a dot concatenator for the struct. And then once this is done, we'll go ahead and remove the quest from the actual active table, because that quest is no longer valid anymore. It's no longer needed. We don't need to track it. We've already collected our rewards. Okay, it's done. It's done. So for that one, we're just going to come down to remove. I'm just going to bring this one. And so this is the process of removing a quest. So as you can see here, so when it's completed, we want to remove it from the active, but we're also going to remove it if it's being tracked. We could also remove it there. So first thing we're going to do is, one, make sure it's a valid quest pointer. Two, we'll run the detach. So we're going to detach our cells from the quest for cleanup purposes. Any active timers, if they're still active, we're going to go ahead and shut them down. Then we're going to remove it from tracking first, and then after we've removed it from tracking, we'll then remove this quest from the active quest. And then once this is done here and here, this quest should then be flagged for cleanup by Unreal Engine's Memory Manager. And then we'll run the onUpdate tracker UI, which will broadcast again to tell the if we have a tracking UI that is to update the tracking list if any of this is currently being tracked. And so that's just the removal process after we've done the complete quest process. Error message. This is pretty much standard. It's just how I like to do things. It's just a function, just checks to make sure the engine's there, engine's valid, and then it does the on-screen, taking in the message, the color, and the seconds that I want it to be up. And this checks to see if the debug message, and this is something that, again, I can turn on or off in the blueprint. So it's kind of handy. All right, so let's just minimize this and minimize this, and I'm just going to minimize that. So restore quest and spawn quest. So these are going to be done. So restoring a quest is done if we are reloading a quest from the save and loading system. So from here, what we have is we have the quest state data, and then we also have the tracker. So if we're tracking this quest in the quest tracker, when I save it, because we're storing it as as a pointer reference. I just want to convert that from pointer reference to the quest ID instead for serialization purposes. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to take the data, we're going to spawn a new quest, and we'll run through the spawning process next. So we'll spawn it, and then once we have that new quest, we're actually going to call the load save data, and we're just going to park all that data into that quest, since we don't need to reinitialize it. And that should set the quest back to that whenever we saved it at that point in time. And then what we'll do is we'll go through the tracker array, and wherever we see the quest, so here get quest row handle name. So what we're doing is we're just iterating through this, and if we find this quest ID in this list, we'll then go ahead and also add it to the current tracker quest as well. And then also, if there is a timed quest, right, and we had a timed quest, and it's like going for a minute. We saved at the half minute, and then it finished, but then we had to restore it because we died. It will then we want to restart the active timer from the last point. So that will then, and all this does is it just goes and says, is there anything that we need to restart? And we'll get to this when we get to the public functions. All right, so spawning a quest. So this is everything that we need to do to get our quest into the active quest. So this is done for both new quests and for restored quests. So what we do here is, so when we're creating an object on the fly during runtime, we're going to use the new object function. And the new object is going to be of type quest object, and so that's going to create a new object pointer for us. And then we're going to do all of our event bindings. So these are all of the events that we have defined up here, right? So this is everything that we want to listen to. This, as well as, actually no, just all of this. So this is everything that that our component is going to be listening to on that individual quest. And then we've got the attach, which is going to be attaching this guy, so that when we do an update, when we broadcast, then all of the active quests that are running through Spawn can listen in to see if they need to update their current objectives. And then once this is all done, we just add it to the array, so it's there, and then we'll just pass this object back. And then, so that's spawn quests. So, and the reason why we're spawning it, we're going to pass it back, is so that if it's a restore, we need to put the load data in. If it's an add new quest, we'll then run the initialization function on that quest. So that's the reason why we're just going to pass this back. All right, and then finally we've just got the isValid handle. Again, when dealing with data tables, we just want to make sure that there is a valid table. So here we're just making sure that there's a valid row, and then here we're just making sure that there's a valid table as well. So we're just validating the row handle. All right, so that should do it for all of our internal functions, which are under protected. So now we can start moving to the public functions, and we can kind of start finishing this off. So the first two functions outside of the tick component is going to be actually let's do the tick component next, since we actually have the tick component here. So the tick component, this only gets activated when we're ready to update the when we need to update an active timed objective. And so all we're going to do here, so we already have the super, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in the other piece. So, and we can come up to here, and let's go to this function here. So when a quest in our active quest array, which is sitting in here, when one of these says, hey, I've moved to a stage and this stage actually has an active timed objective, it's going to fire an event which again comes up to here, and then we add this into the time tracker queue. And then what we then do is, but once we actually have something in the queue, we'll actually turn on the tick component, and then from there on, every time this thing ticks, it's going to then pass in, it's going to then look up in its list. So we're again narrowing the scope to only things that are relevant, right? And then it's going to then go into that list, and it's going to say quest tick update, and this is sitting on quest tick update right here. So, and then that's passing in the delta seconds, and then we'll just update the progress based on the number of delta seconds. So this will tick on the frame rate. So that's how we're going to manage that. And then on relay, and then what we do is we'll just then broadcast out. That way, if we're tracking, if we want to have something in the UI showing the number of seconds that are ticking off, then that's what this will go up to. And then all we're doing is we're just passing up the quest, a reference to the quest, and then we can do whatever we need to do on that quest there. That's all we're doing there. All right, so that's the tick component. So now let's come back to our list. So next we've got the save and loading. So I'm just going to go ahead and do potential fixes for both of those, since they kind of work together a little bit. So we have get save data. So for saving data, this is data that we want to serialize to the save file. We've got our core quest log save data. There's our save. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to iterate through the current save quests, and we're just going to go ahead and get the data and add that into this current save quest data array. And that's all we're doing. Again, this is all nice little functionality which we've already put onto there to kind of help manage that. And then here we've got this is the completed quest. All we're going to do is we're just going to take this and append. So rather than having to just iterate through one array through another array, we're just going to take that whole array and just append it into this. This is an empty array anyway, so that's just how we're going to fill that array. And then here we've got, for tracking purposes, we're going to go through the tracking list again, and this is where we'll actually get the row handle. So because again, this needs to be serialized, so we're going to be converting it from a pointer to a row to the row name, and that row name will then go into the track quest. And then once all of this is done for each and everything in the list, we'll then pass back this full structure, and then this structure will then be put into the save file, which will then get serialized when we save it. And then load is just the opposite of saving. So I'm just going to go grab all of this. So with loading, what we're going to do is we're actually going to clear out the current active quests and clear out the current track quests. All right, so these are pointers. We just want to clear all that information out so that we can restore it. So that's what we're going to do here. So again, we're going to get this, we're going to iterate through the saved data here, and we'll run the restore, and that's going to take in the object, but it's also going to take in the array for the current track quests. That way we can check to see if that is on that list or not. So that's what that's going to do there. And then for completed quests, again, we're just going to wipe out the array, and we're doing this because if we if we die and we need to restore, right, then, or if we are, we say, okay, we're just going to restore to a previous version because we didn't like the way that the current quest was going. It will then go, we need to wipe out all of that history and then restore and then rebuild it from that restore point. So we just want to make sure we clear out those arrays before we restore. That's what that'll do. And then again, we want to update the UI for the tracker. And that's what that's doing there. All right, so that's saving and loading. And I'm just going to go ahead and just minimize this. I think next, let's just keep going down the list. So here's the new quest. So let's go ahead and show potential fixes. So for new quest, it's very similar to the kind of like the loading quest. So this is going to be called from outside the quest log, and this is usually done by the quest giver. So the quest giver is going to hand us the table row handle with the table that the quest is on and the row that it wants to give us. Right, we're going to do a validation on that to make sure this is a valid handle, and then we'll call spawn quest. So that's just like in restore. We're just going to respawn it, which is going to do all the same things we need to do up here. The only difference is that once we get this back, instead of passing in the data from the save and loading system, right, we're just going to initialize the quest. So we pass in the handle, and then this runs the quest initialization code, which is right here. And that's it. All right, so that's creating a new quest, and so we'll play with that in the next video after we've done the integration. We'll hook it all up and just do some basic quests and just add them in and see how that all works. Next is going to be some getters. So we've got the get active quest. So I'm just going to go ahead and just get these blueprint pures. Since they're all getters, they should all be one lines. Alright, so we've got get active quest by ID, get active quest, get all active quests, and then we have get all tracked quests. So for that, so get all active quests by ID. This is us just going into the list and finding that active quest by the quest ID that's coming in. So, and that's all we're doing. I'm just going to go into current active, there's the quest ID. Just make sure that that's the same as that. So this is just an F name. And we're just going to iterate through the active quests, and first we'll make sure that this is still valid, and then if this is valid, we'll then go check to see if this ID here is equal to the row name using the isEqual function. And if it is, we'll then return this valid quest back. Otherwise, if we don't find it, we'll return a null pointer back. Get all active quests. This is just saying, hey, we have an internal table. Just return we're just going to return this. And again, this is constant, so this is just read only. And then we also have the one for all tracked quests. So again, that's just an array of pointers. So there's that there. All right, so next we've got these are blueprint callables. So this is update quest objectives. So this is the one which will update all of our objectives. And so this is the one which is going to be called a lot whenever we need to update an objective that is being managed by, in a quest that is being managed by this quest log. So let me go find that real quick. And so all we're going to do, again, we're just going to call the onUpdate objective progress, broadcast out, and then this is the struct, right? So this is the objective ID and quantity. So we're just going to create this struct, put these two variables in it, and broadcast this structure out to everything that's all the quests which are sitting in the quest log up here. So we'll broadcast that to everything that's in this array, and then each one of these quests will determine if it needs to do anything with that. So again, we just call this, and then we move on with our day, and then we let each individual quest decide if it needs to do anything with this information that's coming in. All right, so let's go back down. So now we've got completed quest by ID, set tracker quest. So we've got some additional functions here. So I'm just going to go ahead and just grab a couple of these just to make it a little bit easier. So complete quest by ID. This is pretty much what it says it is. And so all we're going to do is we're just going to run the get active quest by ID, which is a function we defined up here. And when we get that quest, we're just going to pass it into the quest complete function, which we defined up here, which will then go through the completion process and removal process. So that's just complete quest by ID. Pretty simple. And we're just reusing logic that we've already defined up there. And then set tracker, again, keeping it pretty simple. Yeah, we're going to take, if it's true, right, then we're just going to get the active quest by ID, again, reusing functionality that we've already defined. So this is where we'll add it, and then this is where we'll remove it. All we're going to do is we're just going to say find the quest and then just remove the pointer from the list. This is just adding that pointer to the list, this is just removing it. Pretty simple. All right, next is Blueprint Pure and Blueprint Pure. So we'll just get all completed quests. And I will say get completed quest by ID. So these two kind of the same well, one brings back the whole list, the other one's actually going to bring back an element within that list. So first one, this is just the array, so we might as well just put a pointer to, and we're just going to have this variable here. Again, this is constant, so this is read only, so we can only bring back and read it. And so, and then the next one is we actually want an element from there. So again, I'm just going to go grab this and just tighten that up a little bit. So this is just taking the quest ID coming in, and we'll go check, find it. Actually, I'm going to change this to is equal instead. That's a little bit better. So that's a function, and right now by default it will ignore the case, so which is what I want to do on any f names, and so it's all set. So that does a little bit more. This is a little bit more powerful than just running an equal statement, but it does the same thing. So quest details row is equal, and we'll run that. Okay, so now let's come back up to the quest log. We've only got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe six more functions to finish off, and then we should be done with the quest log. So can turn in quests. So these are all of these functions down here are going to be used more when we get into quest giving, or yeah. So this is kind of how we determine whether we can turn in the quest once we've completed it, or if we can actually do these quests. So it's active quest. So again, these are just little support functions sitting on the quest log. And set pause. So this is the set pause quest timers if we need to pause it. That. All right, so let me just double check, make sure that we're not missing anything. That looks good. All right, so let's go ahead and just fill these all in. All right, so can turn in quest. We'll go to that one next. So again, we're going to put the quest ID. We're taking in the quest ID, and we're going to check to make sure that this quest ID is something we can turn in. So again, we'll say get the active quest. And if we find, yeah, again, this is going into our quest log, so we could put it, if we put an ID that we've already done, we want to double check to make sure that we don't do this again. So we're going to find the quest. If we don't find it, return false, because we can't turn in a quest that we haven't done, or maybe we've completed it already, so we've got a hole in the logic. Either way, we're just making sure that we only deal with quests that we can turn in, and then this will go in and check the can turn in quest. So this is going to check to see if that flag has been set. If it's been set, then it will return true, which will then tell whatever is using this logic to then go ahead and, you know, tally up or take all the rewards, move that over to the character, and do all the other stuff to finish that off. Is quest complete? So again, this is just checking to see if the quest details. So this is going into the completed quest array. So this, so we have concept of turn in versus complete. So for my definition of complete, it means it's been completed, it's turned in, and now that quest is now historical record only. So that's my definition of complete. Before that, it's done but not turned in, so it's not technically complete, even though technically it's complete, but going through the physical process of turning it in makes it complete. So that's kind of how I'm defining that. So again, this is going into the complete quests. We're just going to go and check in to make sure if we find it in there, then it's completed. Otherwise, if we don't find it in there, then it either hasn't been completed, so that, yeah, and so you can then run whatever logic you need to do if you're looking for that quest. Is active quest. Again, this is just going into the current active quest, and we're again doing this. I'm just going to go change this to is equal, since that's what we're doing. It's a little bit more robust. All right, so that is equal. So again, we're going into there and we're checking to see if this quest is currently in the active quest list. So that's all that's doing. And then we've got get active stage ID. So again, we want to find the active stage if we need to do that. So what we're going to do is we're putting in the quest ID, but what we want is the actual stage ID coming back to see what stage we're at. So first check to see if it's active quest. If it's an active quest, then what we'll then do is we'll then say get active quest by ID, and then we'll say get current stage ID. So there's a function on there which already gets that stage ID for us. And again, this is acting, we're creating a wrapper around here just so that we can kind of protect the list. Again, the component is acting as a facade around that list for us. All right, set pause timers. So this is if we need to pause the timers for any reason. So is paused. So if we go into is paused, we'll clear the timer. If it were not paused, then we'll just restart the timer. And that's all that does. This could be useful if you have to pause the game or not, and you need to make sure that you pause those timers when you do that. So in theory, technically, that when you pause the timer, we pause the thread, and if you pause the thread, the game thread, then this should work. But if there's some kind of, if you have a desync or something, it's just an extra little layer of protection there. And then finally, we've got our quest completed outcome. So this is the logic that we're running in our rule set to see if this quest is, if we have a dependence for a dependency rule. So again, this is being done. Let's see if we can find that again. Here's our dependency definition. So this is our dependency, right? So this is the function that we're running here, and this is the state that we want to check. So we're going in, we're checking to see if quest completed outcome. So if this quest is complete, then we'll check to see if the outcome is either passing or failing. So I think I do need to change this code. I need to put this in an if statement. Real quick. And the reason why I need to put this in an if statement is for that statement there. If this has not been complete, if this quest has not been completed, then this is going to return a false. If it returns a false, then we don't even need to worry about any of this. We're just going to come back to false. If it returns true, then we need to figure out what the outcome is. So that needs to be there. And that's kind of done here. So what we do is we run a for each loop, and then based on the statement, this is the outcome. And if it's found, this is the outcome, and we return true. Otherwise, if we don't find it, we're going to return false. And so that was the little extra we needed to do there, just to make sure that that is there, so that we continue with our logic set. All right. Okay, so that should do it for our components. And that should do it for this video. Again, the next video in part 4, we're going to go ahead and integrate this into the controller, and then we're going to go ahead and take the interface that we created in part 1 and use that in both the controller and the character and wire it up. And then once it's all wired up, then we'll go into blueprints, we'll go create a table with some quests on there, and then we'll start feeding it in and kind of start seeing this work. And then maybe we'll also take a look at the save and loading as well. So that is that. Okay, so as always, if you like what I'm doing, feel free to like and share my videos, as well as subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you again in the next video. Cheers, have a good day.